everybody, welcome to today's video on building resilience. If you're new here, give you a quick overview of what we do. You're going to find primarily three types of videos here: Mototherapy, moto vlogs, and product reviews. So today is an example of a Mototherapy video where we work on getting our heads in the right space. How can we build healthier mindsets? So if that seems like it's something interesting to you, I encourage you to subscribe, stick around. Whew, it is smoky. California fires, man. So today's topic is building resilience. So first, let's talk about what is resilience. Resilience to me means being able to stand on your own 2 feet after taking a few punches. Life throws some punches at you, you're able to weather those blows and still be able to stand. Or, you know what, be able just to pick yourself up, not giving up, not staying down. Making a conscious decision to continue on, to keep trying. So despite all the challenges, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite all the chaos surrounding you, you are still going to have a positive mindset. You're still going to do the best you can, and you're not going to let things keep you down. So that's what resilience means to me. It's not necessarily tenacity, although I do see it as being parallel. I interpret tenacity as more as never giving up in the moment, so kind of doing whatever you got to do in the moment to get the job done. I see resilience as something that can happen, before, during, and after an event. Turkeys! So resiliency is also going into a situation with confidence, being able to be very thoughtful in a situation, not letting the anxiety and fear get to you, or at least not let it have an effect on you. You can still feel it, but not let it control you, not let it have an effect on you. There's some people who just seem to always be cool, calm, and collected in any situation. Doesn't seem like there's anything that can really faze them. No matter what life throws at them, they're pretty stoic. People aren't typically born being resilient. People aren't born being able to weather whatever life throws at them. It's a skill. It's something that's learned. It's something that you experience over time. I don't know anybody who's just resilient right from the get-go. There's people who are more stable, but I see it more as a skill. It's something that's learned. It's something that you can practice over time. You see yourself as someone who's not being a resilient individual, then that's something you can practice. And if you do see yourself as being a resilient individual, then it's something you can continue to work on and continue to improve, right? It's a scale. There's degrees within that scale of how resilient are you. So that's what is resiliency. Next, we're going to talk about why should you be resilient? Why should you try to practice this skill? Fundamentally, life's going to throw challenges at you. There's no escaping it. You can try to avoid stress. You can try to avoid the challenges. You can do everything in your power to not feel uncomfortable. But there is always going to be times in your life where you just have to step up and deal with it. Even looking at today's environment where there's an incredible amount of uncertainty. There's an incredible amount of doubt in the world. The virus has really shaken up society in terms of how we think of ourselves and how we do things. Frankly, our future is very uncertain in terms of what our new reality is going to look like. Even with the fires, you can probably see how much ash is in the air right now. And I'm pretty far away from the fires, but there's still a lot of ash. Okay, what happens if the fires do end up reaching me? What am I going to do? So resiliency is going to be able to help you deal with those situations. It's going to help ensure that you're not being controlled by any resistance or fear that you may be encountering. So even for everyday situations where, you may have to do things that are a bit more uncomfortable, or even in your role and your job, you got to ask for help. You need to ask your manager for something. You got to be brave and stand up for yourself and be your own advocate. Those are all scenarios that require some level of resilience. Asking for a promotion requires a level of bravery. And if you don't get that promotion, that's okay. It's not about giving up and quitting the job just because you didn't get the promotion, but rather continuing to work hard and trying to understand why you didn't get that promotion. So another reason why you should become resilient is because you're setting yourself up for long-term improvement and long-term success. You can run away from things in the short term, but inevitably life's going to hit you one way or another. So you might as well develop yourself so when it does hit you, you're better equipped to handle those situations. And you never know when something's going to happen. Life has a great way of surprising us every now and then. You have nothing to lose by trying to become more resilient. You have only things to gain. There's only lessons to be learned there. So now we're going to talk about how to become resilient. So we talked about what is resilience. We talked about why to become resilient. So third, we're going to talk about how to be resilient. An analogy I like to use is, think of it like you have to run a marathon in a month. Surprise! Surprise! Life comes at you and says, hey, you have to go run this. So they got a couple different options there. So you can either try and work out super hard every day, try to run a marathon every day leading up to that one marathon. If you're out of shape, if you're just starting running, you're gonna burn yourself out. You're literally gonna destroy your muscles to the point where you're not gonna be able to move. And when it's time to run that marathon, you burned yourself out. You don't have any energy left. You never gave yourself any time to recover. Now, the flip side of that is you ignored it. You said, that's a problem for tomorrow. That's a problem for later. So you don't really work out at all. You don't really practice. You don't do anything at all. And then suddenly comes the big day where you gotta go run that marathon, and you are woefully unprepared for all of those miles. You might be able to get a few miles in, but it is going to be exponentially harder than if you try to prepare for it in the right way. So how do you prepare for it in the right way? Well, you come up with a plan, you practice, you take incremental steps to get there, and you give yourself time to recover. You give yourself time to rest and to step away from the situation. Resiliency is kind of the same thing. It's a skill, as I mentioned before, and it requires practice. You don't just suddenly become resilient overnight because you decided you want to, but rather you have to put yourself in situations to practice being resilient. And that can mean a number of different things. That can mean asking for something, asking for that promotion, asking for that raise, asking for someone to help you. And depending on your situation, it can even be something like breaking a relationship, so breaking up with somebody, or not being friends with someone anymore because you realize that they're incredibly toxic. So you don't typically just become resilient overnight. It requires some practice. So that means you got to find some situations where you got to be brave and do something that makes you uncomfortable. Frankly, that's how you become more resilient, is by getting experience dealing with uncomfortable situations, and sometimes even failure, and picking yourself up despite those failures. You gotta practice. It's a skill. It's something you learn over time. Just like running a marathon, you gotta practice and give yourself time to recover. And you have to forgive yourself if you fail. Take a moment to really learn from different situations and be able to develop yourself so that way you can grow. If you encounter some unexpected challenges and you don't handle it in the best way, that's okay. What's important is that you dwell upon those situations and forgive yourself and give yourself a chance to try again. Hey, dear. Well, there's more deer. Always gotta be careful up in these hills. Lots of deer. And apparently turkeys. So here's some tips on how to practice becoming more resilient after a situation. What works for me is to keep things factual. Focus on what is true. What are the cold, hard facts of a situation? I tend not to rely on emotion. And I tell my wife the same thing, and we'll call her Tiny Tater. I tell Tiny Tater the same thing. Don't rely on your emotions because they can be wildly inaccurate. Emotions tend to blow things way out of proportion. You may be harder on yourself unnecessarily. You may be painting a more skewed picture than what is reality. So I tend to focus on, and encourage other people to focus on, what is true? What are the cold, hard facts of a situation? What can be observed? What were the behaviors? What was said? What was done? So focus what's true. Second tip is be positive. To be resilient is to not be too hard on yourself, and you can give yourself a little pity party every now and then if you need to, but it's to not beat yourself up unnecessarily. If you made a huge mistake, you can beat yourself up a little bit to ensure that the lesson is learned and you don't make that mistake again. Don't beat yourself up to the point where you're just doing damage without any real benefit. Try to have a positive mindset. Forgive yourself. No situation is 100% bad. nor is any situation ever 100% good. So if you're doing a good job, look for those things that can be improved upon, right? Nobody's perfect. There's never a time in your life where you can say, I'm done learning and I'm perfect. I've developed the skill as best as it will ever be. Instead, if you're doing a good job, focus on, all right, I'm doing a good job and that's awesome. What else can I do better? What else can I develop? What else can I learn to continuously do better? The same can be true for a bad situation. There's going to be good things in those situations. There's always going to be something good you can find in any situation. No situation is 100% bad. No matter how dire the situation is, you can always find something good about it. Sometimes you have to look a little bit harder, but if you try to have that positive mindset, it's going to be a little bit easier to find. Which leads me into the last point of the illusion of failure. You can look at failure in a number of different ways. Now, you can certainly fail a situation and you can walk away from that and just say, well, I'm never doing that again. And in that case, I would say, yes, that is a failure. It becomes an illusion when you start to break it down and you turn that failure into a learning opportunity. When something doesn't go the way you want it, you can stop and ask yourself, okay, what can I do better next time? What happened in that situation to lead me in the way that it did? Or what can I do next time to try and get an incremental improvement? What can I do better next time if I'm ever in that situation again? Even if you never go through that situation again, it's still the lessons that are learned. It's still getting into that habit to put yourself in that healthy mindset, to put yourself in that resilient mindset. It's always learning, it's always growing, it's always developing yourself. It's never just accepting a defeat or accepting a failure for what it is. You're always trying to break it down and ask yourself, what can I do better next time? What were some of the things that I did right in that situation? Even though the overall outcome isn't where I wanted it to be, what were some of the things I did right? And then you can also ask yourself, what were some of the other things I can do to improve? So that way, if you ever go through that situation again, you're more mentally prepared to go through it. Now, let's say if you have a situation, you just walk away from it and you don't bother trying to learn from it again, you're much more likely to make the same mistakes, and you're more likely to end up in the same situation, and then you're more likely to get frustrated and depressed and more anxious about a situation, and then you try to avoid that situation altogether because that's when you start to think, I'm not good at this, I don't want to go through the situation again, I'm just going to fail at this, and then it turns into this self-fulfilling prophecy, and now whatever that situation is, it's surrounded with fear and uncertainty and doubt, and now you're in a avoidance mindset rather than a resilient mindset. When you break down those situations, I don't know about you, but at least for me, whenever I'm in a situation and I don't get the outcome that I'm looking for, aka fail, I actually kind of get excited about trying to go through that situation again to try and do better the next time around. I want to try it again because I want to learn. I want to show, yes, I actually can do it. So to quickly summarize, we talked about what is resilience. It's getting into that mindset of picking yourself up, weathering those punches, whatever life throws at you. We talked about why you should become resilient, because life's going to throw stuff at you no matter what you do. You can't escape uncomfortable situations for your entire life. So you might as well go through it and develop yourself to be able to handle those and to seek out that discomfort, to seek out the uncomfortable situations so that way you can learn more from them and to help practice building the skill set that is resiliency. And then last, we talked about how to do it. Fundamentally, practice, practice, practice. Find opportunities for you to practice resiliency. Finally, the last few tips that I offered: keep it factual, focus on what is true. Don't rely on emotion. Emotion can be very fickle. Emotion can tend to run wild and blow things way out of proportion. So focus on what is true. Have a positive mindset. No situation is ever 100% bad. Flip side of that, no situation is ever 100% good. So always look for those opportunities to learn. Always look for those opportunities to improve yourself. And lastly, we talked about the illusion of failure. So failure is only truly ever a failure when you don't try to learn from it. Failure becomes an illusion when you break it down and try to understand it. What were the lessons learned? What would you do differently if you go through that situation again? So when you do that, failure is no longer a failure, but a learning opportunity. So that'll about wrap it up. If you liked the video, go ahead and click that like button. Leave a comment below what you thought was most meaningful. If you didn't like the video, that's okay. Tell me why. Tell me what you didn't like about it. How can I improve? How can I get better? If you want to see more content, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Be brave, do good, take care of yourselves. Peace.